I'm currently a junior at Iowa State studying health, biology, nutrition, all these amazing things. If you know me, you know how passionate I am about studying the human body, and I plan on becoming a chiropractor this upcoming January. Starting my journey at Chiropractic College this January, which I'm super excited for. Today, I'm going to be going over what's called biophysics. This image here, I believe to be much more than just a painting, the creation of Adam by Michelangelo, located in the Sistine Chapel. What this depicts is ultimately the creation of the divine design. Man was made in God's image. And what I believe this is depicting is God, through the laws of physics, actually creating man. Man studies biochemistry, even though through the laws of physics, that's how the biochemistry works. So, in order to truly achieve optimal health, it's our duty. We must understand these fundamental laws of physics, which govern the biochemistry to truly achieve optimal health. And I believe that is to allow for this universal innate intelligence to express itself fully 100%. So, next slide. The fuel for the body is obviously the food, which we've covered. I hope all you guys have at least a decent idea on what you should and shouldn't be eating. Obviously, that's highly important, as what you put in your body ultimately becomes you. But what we fail to realize is that this is not everything. You can eat healthy, but still be overweight. And why? How would that be? Well, there's a whole nother story to this. The engine of the body, this is known as the mitochondria. This right here changed my life. In the past 6 months or so, I've discovered this whole new perspective of looking at the body. The mitochondria is everything. The mitochondria is actually the part of the body, the part of our cells, that converts the food we eat into energy that ultimately is used by the body. 90% of the energy that's created in the body is made by the mitochondria. Next slide. So here's a typical eukaryotic cell, every cell in the body, in the human body, and then mitochondria. We have between a few hundred to up to like 10,000 mitochondria per cell. I just learned the other day that neurons actually have up to 2 million mitochondria, which is amazing. The voltage in the inner mitochondrial membrane is 30 million volts per meter, which is 10 times stronger than the voltage inside of a lightning bolt. So just to give you an idea of how divine the body is, but also this incredible organelle. This is what controls the entire system. Next slide. Okay, so here's a very simplified diagram of the mitochondria. It uses oxygen, that's why we inhale oxygen, and when it creates energy, it releases carbon dioxide, and that's why we exhale carbon dioxide. The energy it creates is called ATP. It also creates water as a byproduct. That's why I circled it here, which I'll talk about in a few slides. In my cell biology class, in the textbook, it'll tell you right there that the water the mitochondria makes is merely a byproduct of cellular respiration when we create energy. But it's extremely, extremely important, which I'll cover in a few slides. So like I said, the mitochondria creates 90% of the body's energy. So the mitochondria is actually what connects all chronic disease. Mitochondrial dysfunction manifests into all disease. All disease, and that's why I'm so passionate about the mitochondria. So lack of cellular energy is the root cause. Dr. Doug Wallace here, an amazing, brilliant researcher at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the world-leading researcher of mitochondria he said, mitochondrial dysfunction underlies the etiology, the development of most common complex diseases, as well as aging. So that's how significant the mitochondria is. Ultimately, what we want to do is optimize the mitochondria. Next slide. So yeah, the question is, I don't know if you're not asking that question, I don't know what you're asking. How do we optimize mitochondria? So the answer is simply nature. The mitochondria, which like I said, creates all the energy, 90% of the energy in the body, doesn't have a proteins, a fats, or a carbohydrate sensor. The mitochondria uses electrons. This right here is what's called the electron transport chain. Electrons ultimately get transferred through multiple protein complexes, and then you create energy. Where do we get these electrons? Well, all food we eat is ultimately broken down into electrons, which then enter the mitochondria. The next source of electrons, directly from the sun. Straight from the sun, we get electrons. And then the third thing, like Dr. Gilbert mentioned, is grounding. This is another amazing source of energy. The Earth is abundantly filled with electrons, and they move right through your sweat glands in your feet, and they power your biochemistry. So those are the three sources right there. I'll definitely write that down, remember that. Food, sunlight, and grounding. Next slide. So, sunlight, this is the key takeaway of my speech. I really want all of you to remember this. So, infrared light, which is about 40 to 50% of sunlight, or the red light here that we're offering in the clinic, that is what directly stimulates mitochondria. So you're going to create more energy, and you're going to create more water, which I'll cover in the next slide. Dr. Alexander Wunsch, another incredible researcher out of Germany, an expert in photobiology, and he's also a biophysicist, has said that only 1/3 of the energy your body consumes comes from the food you eat. So what does that mean? The other 2/3 come from the sun, or from grounding, but primarily the sun, in particular, infrared light. So then what can we conclude from that? That the less sun you get, the more electrons you need from food. How amazing is that? So the more sun you get, you won't need as much food. You won't need to eat as much. So then we can also conclude that vitamin D is not the only benefit of sunlight. Next slide. And then I'm sure somebody, at least one of you guys, is asking this. Light through glass is not the same as light directly on the skin. It blocks 30 to 60% of infrared, blocks no blue light, which is toxic in isolation, and it blocks majority of UV. Next slide. Okay, so this is something else that's so fascinating to me. This is Dr. Gerald Pollack, a researcher out of the University of Washington. He has found, he's a bioengineer, and he found this out. He found that the water we drink is not the same as the water in our body. And so why is this? It's because the mitochondria creates this water that has different optical properties than the water we drink. So what does that mean? It reacts differently when water hits it. It actually has the capacity to store solar energy. And so when infrared light hits the water in the body, it splits charge. If we have any engineers in here, we know that when you split charge, positive and negative, you create a battery directly. And so this water in the body is what's called the fourth phase of water. So you have solid, liquid, and gas. And just in the past 10 to 15 years, I want to say, we've discovered what's called gel water. It's the fourth phase of water. And you can actually feel it if you feel your arm. It's a gel. So it's a fourth phase. It's incredible. And yeah, like I said, when infrared light hits it, it creates a battery. Next slide. And then this is here. This is it here. So the water separates charge, so you have a ton of electrons, and then you have protons. So that is what powers the battery. And in Dr. Gerald Pollack's lab, they actually used they used the easy water, this structure, to turn on a light bulb. It is direct energy for the body, the infrared light hitting the water. That's made, like I said, by the mitochondria. Next slide. So why is this important? Well, all of biochemistry happens in an aqueous environment. And when I say aqueous, I mean this water. And when this water is formed, it creates this coherent, divine structure. And that's what allows for what's called quantum precision in biochemistry. So there's no disorder. Keep in mind, all disease and all aging is at the fundamental level, it's disorder. So as long as you have structured water, you have coordinates and you have coherence. We also know that this generates, like I said, the battery, so you get a generation of free electrons that can then enter the mitochondria. That's going to charge the body. And then the third thing, which I wanted to highlight, is that this water forms on all hydrophilic surfaces in the body. When I say hydrophilic, that means water-loving. And there are a lot of water-loving surfaces in the body. Next slide. Does anybody know the #1 killer of human beings? heart disease. What do we know? That this structured water forms on both the inner lining of blood vessels and on the outside of red blood cells. So what that means, we'll look at the red blood cells first, is that as long as you have structured water around this, you have negative on negative charge, therefore the red blood cells repel. There's no clotting. How incredible is that? In the artery, as long as you have the structured water formed in the, what's called the endothelium, the lining of the artery, nothing bigger than the size of an ion can pass through this structure. Keep in mind, cholesterol is much, much bigger than an ion. So therefore, what can we conclude from this? That maintaining this easy water, this structured water in the body is more important than your cholesterol levels. That's how important this structured water is. And it's what I believe to be incredibly divine, this fourth phase of water. Next slide. I also want to note this. The level of nitric oxide in blood vessels is directly correlated with plaque buildup. As you can see, throughout your lifetime, people that are age 60 and up have much lower nitric oxide levels, and that's why they have much higher buildup. UVA light, which is present for maybe I want to say about 11 a.m. to late evening, or to maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon, directly stimulates nitric oxide in the body wherever it hits the skin. So if you want to have a healthy heart, get sunlight right on your heart. Next slide. Timing. This is something that I also really want to emphasize. So timing controls the flow of energy in this machine, in this system that we call the human body. So all biochemistry happens on a 24-hour cycle. That's called your circadian rhythm. This is the bedrock. This is what controls all of physiology. If we don't have timing, we have chaos. I just learned recently, I've been really diving into what's called entropy. Entropy is the word in thermodynamics which describes the degree of disorder, which ultimately means lack of information. As long as the system has information, there is little entropy, and there's order, which means there's health and there's vitality. Well, what did God choose to allow the body to tell time? What is the fundamental mechanism here? It's light. What did God say right in Genesis? Let there be light. He said, God chose light and darkness, and he called this day and night. And this is the 24-hour cycle of the day, which controls all of physiology. And as long as we don't have this timing, we have chaos. Next slide. So what does this mean? This is basically a summary of what Dr. Gilbert went over. I really appreciate you addressing blue light. So morning sunrise is super, super important. That's what turns the brain on. That's what basically installs order in the body. That's what allows the body to understand that it's another day. Direct sunlight throughout the day, both into the eyes and on the skin. Don't stare right at the sun if it's midday, but let me tell you, the way the body is able to tell time, just like that, the second you step outside. And this 24-hour cycle is what it runs on, and it's of the utmost importance. Avoid artificial light after sunset. Those blue light blockers will change your life. You'll get better sleep, you'll feel better the next day. And then also keep in mind that the eyes are a direct extension of the brain, so they need rest. So if you're not respecting the darkness, your eyes can never restore properly. The retina is going to be damaged. The retina is part of the brain. When you damage the retina, that damage can generalize and it can spread to other parts of the brain. Whatever part of the brain it spreads to, that's what neurodegenerative disease you get. So that's how important the light and the dark is. Like I said, God said it right in Genesis. So the blue light blockers are key. Open windows whenever possible. You can get what's called a lux meter and detect the level of photons, light particles present. And the second you open one window, even if it's way over in the corner, light travels at 186,000 miles per second. And those photons enter the room and they bounce everywhere. And that instantly allows the body to tell time. Dinner, this is the slight discrepancy we have. So dinner, in my opinion, should be your smallest meal. Breakfast should be your biggest. There's a reason we're most insulin sensitive about an hour after we wake up.
you can actually eat the same meal about an hour after breakfast, or that same meal for dinner, and through time you will be much leaner if you ate it in the morning. And then also the sleep benefits of not digesting a bunch of food that you ate for dinner are very important. So then the last thing is a picture of me with my dog with my blue light blockers on. I also wanted to mention that it's super important to make sure that they're dark lensed. A lot of people have like a lighter tinted, they don't actually block all of blue light. That's super important. And then avoiding sunglasses. So I put a picture of Kim Kardashian here, so everyone loves their sunglasses, right? Well, as long as you wear sunglasses, your body cannot tell time. It's cellular chaos. And then keep in mind that you're also gonna get more sunburn because proper light stimulus into the eye allows the body to prepare for the wavelengths of light that are present at the time. Next slide. Okay, so now this is what I believe to be the most fascinating thing of all. I don't think there's a person in this room, besides my good friend Jude, that knows about this. So melanin is much more than merely a molecule in your skin that protects from sunlight. Melanin actually plays a huge role in how the body truly works through the lens of biophysics. It isn't just found in the skin, it's found all over the body. There's 3 types of melanin. It's found in the nervous system, it's found in the eyes, the retina, it's found in the nose, it's found in the ears, it's found everywhere. So you may ask why. Next slide. This study here, titled Parkinson's disease, may be due to failure of melanin in the substantia nigra, the brainstem, to produce the products of dissociating water. This showed that melanin has the capacity to split the water molecule. What is water? H2O. When you split it, you create hydrogen, you create oxygen, and you create electrons. What does the mitochondria use? It uses hydrogen, it uses oxygen, and it uses electrons. So how amazing is that? If melanin is everywhere, next slide, and it's found adjacent to water molecules wherever it's found, then what does that mean? God designed melanin to be used to harness energy to then split water to instantly create energy. So a primary example of this is sunlight hitting melanin in the skin allows for the electrons around the melanin molecule to jump. Electrons, when they operate around atoms, if they receive enough energy, they're photonically excited and they jump rings basically, and they jump into nearby water molecules. When they jump into the nearby water molecules, you split the water and you instantly create energy. So then what does that mean? That melanin is a biological solar panel. If you have a tan and you go out in the sun, you're instantly creating energy for the body. Next slide. Okay, so how does chiropractic fall into this? When I learned this was when I realized that I truly wanted to be a chiropractor. And I still don't even know if my own father understands how incredible this is. So the first thing we know is that bone is a piezoelectric material, which means when you apply a force to it, it creates electrons, it creates energy. So what force are we talking about here? A chiropractic adjustment. So just by applying force to a bone, you instantly create electrons. What do we also know? Our own cells emit light. This light comes from the mitochondria, and it's called biophotons. They're called biophotons, biophotonic emission. It's the most incredible thing. We are beings of light. If you read any of the spiritual literature, it doesn't matter the religion, light is the most divine thing. We're made of light. Everything is made of light. Everything we see is merely a reflection of light. So, what's so incredible is that chiropractic has been proven to increase the amount of light that our body makes. And I wanted to thank Dr. Stephen Hussey, an amazing chiropractor, for the inspiration on this topic. He presented a lecture on this, which was really inspiring. Next slide. So yeah, this study here, quantum events of biophoton emission associated with complementary and alternative medicine therapies. They performed a variety of chiropractic techniques, and they found that all techniques induced small but statistically significant changes in the BPE, the biophoton emission. And you can see here, I can't see that, but basically they showed through different chiropractic techniques that adjusting specific vertebrae, those vertebrae emitted more light. So then I put here subluxation. What is a subluxation? Sub, less than, lux means light, less light. So you're emitting less light as long as you have a subluxation. So then I want to say thank you, God, for this incredible profession. With our hands, we make the body emit more light. Next slide. All right. Can you play the video? It's just fantastic. So you have the piezoelectric force generating electricity, the increase in biophoton emission, and then we all know you're removing subluxation. So these are three ways of how chiropractic is the most incredible profession. And that's what we call innate intelligence. And then I wanted to mention that the light the body emits after a chiropractic adjustment then hits the melanin, which then splits the water, which creates energy. So that is why after an adjustment, you feel revitalized, you feel amazing, because you're directly creating energy that then enters the mitochondria, and you're healthy. Next slide. So yeah, here's a really simple diagram, if you're still not really conceptualizing this. So energy from a chiropractic adjustment, or from sunlight hitting the skin, hits the melanin. The melanin molecule, the electrons, then jump, split nearby water, which then instantly creates energy that enters the mitochondria. And what do we know? That all of chronic disease, at a fundamental level, is mitochondrial dysfunction, lack of energy for the body to use. Next slide. Okay, to finish, the oligoscan, this is what we offer in the clinic. It is extremely valuable testing. It's basically going to provide you with an overview of your mineral, your vitamin levels, as well as your toxin levels, your heavy metal levels, which is of the utmost importance today, as we know, as we've gone over in this talk today. The test is based on light reflection, what's called spectrophotometry. So through the use of a spectrophotometer, we shine wavelengths of light through the tissue, and each mineral and metal and vitamin reacts differently to various wavelengths of light. The oligoscan software is basically able to detect how much of each mineral, metal, and vitamin is present in your tissue. So it's much, much different than your typical blood, hair, or urine test. It allows you to see the heavy metals you've accumulated into your tissues throughout the course of your entire life. And if you sign up today, it's only $100, it's only $150. So I would highly, highly recommend, if you're taking supplements, if you're planning on taking any supplements, you get a snapshot of where you currently stand. So you could save yourself a lot of money if you're taking a supplement or planning to that you don't even need. And you can understand if you have deeply stored metals. And if you have deeply stored metals, we know they store in fat, that can really hinder the body from unleashing its full potential. Next slide. So you get all your key vitamins, A, B6, B9, B12, C, D, and E. Next slide. Heavy metals, cadmium, mercury, aluminum. There are numerous sources for these metals, and they accumulate in the body and they're toxic. And then I also wanted to mention that they are positively charged. Electrons are negatively charged. So this test can also serve as a proxy of the charge in your body. So if your mitochondria is not working, your body's going to have a less capacity to remove these metals. So this can also provide you an idea of your redox state. Redox state basically means the amount of charge in your body. Next slide. So, takeaways. The human body is the most complex but divine system in the universe. And through the lens of physics, which I hope I explained to you guys in a simple way, we can truly understand how the system works, and therefore we can honor God's creation. Nature is the answer: sunlight, grounding, circadian rhythm. Oligoscan testing I would highly, highly recommend, and chiropractic care is essential. So, thank you all for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer after the talk at the end. Thank you.